How to parameterize the flat file name and file path in Informatica BDM. In most of the real-time project, we are dealing with many flat file object in the mapping, and most of the time we may need to parameterize the file name and the file path in the parameter file to run the workflow. Let's see how to do that in Informatica BDM. Once you create the flat file object, go to its properties, parameter section, and here you can define all the parameter fields which you need for the object. Here I have defined a parameter for file name, file path, that is for source, and created the same file name, file path for target, because the same object can be used for both read and write operations. So I defined four parameter fields for file name and file path in the object level parameter session. Once it's done, next go to the advanced property. Here you can go to the read section and assign the file name and file path you just created to corresponding source file name and source file directory session. Okay, so this is the place we are linking the parameter file which you defined in the object level to the corresponding field. Same thing, scroll down a bit, you can see the write session. Here the same thing, output file directory and output file name. Here you can link the target file path and target file name, the parameter field which you just created. So till now in the object level in the parameter session we defined four parameter fields, one for source level and one for target level, and then in the advanced property we linked the created parameter fields with the corresponding fields. So we are done with the object level. Now let's go to the mapping level. In the mapping, so this is the mapping which I created and I am using that object as a source, and also I'm using the same object as my target. Here in the mapping level there is a go to the property. Here you can see the parameter field, parameter tab. There you define the same set of parameter fields. You can use the same name, that doesn't matter, or different name. I created the same set of parameter fields again in the mapping level, source file name, source file path, and target file name, target file path. Here also you can define the default value in this field in here itself to run the mapping, right? If you need to run the mapping, you can give the default value from here, but at the end basically we will be passing all these value from the parameter file. So just focus only define the parameter fields here now. So once you define the parameter fields in the parameter session, now let's go to the object level inside the mapping. Click on the read object, right? So you remember we already defined the parameter field in the object level. So once you click here, go to the data object parameter. Here you can see those parameter fields which you created in the object level, and this is the place we are linking the parameter field which you created in the mapping level and the parameter fields which you created the object level. Here we can link together. Just select all the file name, file path, all whatever you are seeing here is coming from the object level. Just select all and click expose as mapping parameter. So if you see the right side, right, the instance value right now it is not assigned anything, but once you select either one by one or select all and click expose as mapping parameter, you can see the value will be assigned properly. See the result. I click the expose as mapping parameter. Now you can see, right, the object level parameter fields is linked with the mapping level parameter fields. So I think we are good so far. We created the same set of parameter fields in the mapping level and linked with the object level. Now let's go to one more level, right? We can define the same set of parameter fields in the workflow level, and then from the workflow we can pass it to the mapping. Let's see how to do that. I created a workflow for the same mapping, right? In this workflow you can see the mapping. The second task is the mapping which we just created, right? So again here also we can define the parameter fields. So go to the workflow properties parameter section, define the same set of uh, parameter fields, right? Again, the name doesn't matter. You can keep the same name or different name, that doesn't matter. So I define the same set of parameter fields for source and target, right? And here also I assign default value. If you want to run the workflow manually, this value will be get used in the mapping. Okay, but let's focus on the fields now, definition now. Okay, we define those four parameter fields. Now click on the mapping object, click on the mapping object, so you can see the corresponding mapping properties here. Go to the input section. So what we are doing here, this is the place we are linking the workflow parameter fields with the mapping parameter fields. So what you can do, go to the input section, you can see all the parameter fields, right, from the mapping. So these are the parameter fields which you defined in the mapping level. Okay, and here, right, you can assign the corresponding value. So which value you need to pass it to the mapping, that is what we are doing here. Here you can select from the drop down, you can select. So here it will be, here the parameter fields which you defined in the workflow level will be displayed here. So you can select the drop down, select the particular field, parameter field in the workflow level, it will be linked with the mapping fields. So just go to the drop down, select the corresponding fields and assign it to the mapping fields. Once you are done, it will be look like this. Okay, so this is how we are linking workflow parameter fields with the mapping parameter fields. The input basically is talking about we are passing input these parameter fields as input to the mapping. Okay, so now we defined three levels of parameterization, right? First we defined and created parameter field in the object level, then we defined the same set of parameter field in the mapping level, right, and linked between those, and then third level we created the same set of parameter fields in the workflow level and linked with the mapping level. So now the thing is like, if you run the workflow, these parameter fields will be get passed to the mapping, and from the mapping it will get passed to the object. So that's how the flow of these parameter fields. So we can do one more level, right? As you know, we can export these parameter fields, right? The fields which we created here, we can export these parameter fields into an XML file, and that is your final parameter file. If you want to use any values, right, you can easily modify the XML file, give any value, any default value. You can change the default value to give your own value, and then when you run the workflow, you can use that parameter file. So run the workflow with the parameter XML file, so that the flow will be parameter file, the workflow will get the value from the parameter file, and then it will get passed to the workflow, it will get passed to the mapping, and from mapping it will go to the object level. So this is how the entire flow for the parameter fields. So now let's see how these parameter fields get assigned, right, in each scenario. Think about like for a unit testing perspective, you are running your mapping, you are running only your mapping. So you can go to the mapping, right click here, go to run the mapping, right? When you do that, whatever parameter fields and the values which you defined in the mapping level, right, will get assigned. So here the default value listed in the mapping will be passed to the object and will be used in the mapping when you run the mapping alone. And when you run the workflow, right, from the developer tool, either you can use infacmd command to run only the workflow, or you can deploy the application and select the workflow and run the workflow from the developer tool. In that scenario, when you run the workflow alone from the tool, the values listed in the parameter section in the workflow level will be get assigned and used in the mapping. Here, as you see, we define the file name, we define the default value, and then we linked with the mapping, right, in the input section. So when you run the workflow from the tool, this value will be get assigned to the mapping while executing it. In this scenario, we are not using any parameter file. So think about that scenario. We are running the workflow with a parameter file, the file which we exported as an XML file, right? In that file, you can define your own values. That will be the actual values. That value will be get assigned to the workflow, mapping, and then object level. So this is how the data flows. You can run the mapping alone, you can run the workflow from the tool, you can run the workflow with the parameter file. So these three different scenario will get the parameter fields from three different sections where you define the parameter fields. Okay, so hope you are clear now, but if you have any question, please reach out to me. You can see the entire documentation in my website. Just go through it and understand how the data flow happening all the way from XML file to the mapping and then object. Uh, if you have any question, just get back to me. Hope this help. Please subscribe the channel if you think this content is useful. I will come up with another topic in Informatica BDM in my next video. Thank you.